Talking Ball podcast. It's actually only going to be me today, as Grant and Ethan are both unable to make it. So we're going to throw it back to the original, the OG, the formerly Degress podcast, as it is just me solo. Got a loaded show though, nonetheless. Grant and Ethan aren't able to make it, but the content's never going to stop. We're right in the middle of football season. Hard Knocks episode 1 was just last night. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet. I'm going to probably try and watch it after I'm done recording here. But nonetheless, I just got to spend four days with my dad in Ann Arbor and Detroit. I'm going to be recapping that. And we also have, with it being football season, the eve of the first day of practice in North Dakota high school starts tomorrow. I know former guest and good friend of the program, Mike Zier, he's going to be having his first practice start in about, it's 7:30 Mountain Time right now. So in about 3.5 hours, the Beach Buccaneers are going to be having their first practice at midnight. Throwing it to, we got Midnight Madness in North Dakota. One of the only teams that does that. They'll practice under the lights at their field in Beach, which is something really cool, very unique, something that you don't often see. I know he takes a lot of pride in it. I saw that the breakfast he's got for the kids looks delicious. I might have to just drive down to Beach and try to see if I can snag some. So, Mike, if you are listening, I would love to get some of that midnight breakfast that you have post practice. But Trinity, we start our practice tomorrow at 7 a.m. I am very, very excited to start the new year. It's kind of like that Christmas morning. You're all excited. You can't sleep. You know, you're waking up all night in excitement, thinking of what Santa's going to bring you. He's bringing us a new football season, new hope, new joy, new excitement. And every year, new opportunity for some guys to step up, you know, take what they learned from last year and improve and help become get better on the field and in person. But before we get into the Big 12 and AFC and NFC West previews here, I'm going to talk a little bit about my trip down to Ann Arbor. My dad and I both have never been to Michigan. My dad has been in the airport in Detroit, but has never actually stepped foot outside of the airport. So this was technically his first time in the state of Michigan. Hard to believe that it was my first time in the state of Michigan. I've had a lot of people ask me about it, if I've ever been there before, which answer has been no. I was close to going a few years ago, but there were some things that came up. Wasn't quite able to make it. Would have been fun to go. Plan was to go to the 21 Michigan-Ohio State game, which was the first game that Michigan had won in 10 years at that point. But some things came up where we weren't able to make it work. But it was still a great day. Got to celebrate Michigan beating Ohio State, which really at that point was like the first time since in 18 years that I can really remember Michigan beating Ohio State, or being able to actually witness when it happened. Because when Michigan won in 2011, I was a junior in high school and we had basketball practice. I got to see the start of it, but I didn't get to see the end because we had basketball practice right in the middle of that game. So once practice got over, I sprinted to the locker room. I was checking my phone. I had that was back when you could get the text messages for ESPN alerts, and I'm checking, I'm scrolling, I'm going, and I'm like looking, Michigan 40, Ohio State 34. I let out a big scream in the locker room, all excited because it finally happened. And then it didn't last too long because Urban Meyer showed up and dominated the rivalry. But in 21, Michigan was able to come back on top. But that was one of the last things we did was tour the big house. But the flight, it was the trip to Detroit was a little bit hairy. So we flew out of Bismarck, and it was Bismarck, Minneapolis, Detroit. And for some reason, our flight out of Bismarck decided to take a little bit to load we probably loaded about a half hour later than what we were supposed to. I think by the time when we were supposed to be taking off was when we started boarding, or maybe it was 10 minutes after we were supposed to take off is when we finally started boarding. And my dad and I are looking like, what's going on? What the deal is, and not sure at all. There was no communication as to why it was so delayed. And they finally start boarding, and we're looking. It's like, ooh, we're gonna be cutting it close. I think we got off the plane, and the Minneapolis airport isn't a small airport, and I'm like, well, it's going to be close, but I think we can get there. It wasn't too far of a walk, and I looked at the gate, and I start speed walking towards our gate, thinking like 4 minutes, and it said it was an 8-minute walk, and I'm moving as fast as I can, and I was like, wait, I didn't tell my dad what gate it is, so hopefully he's able to figure it out. So I call him, I tell him, hey, we're at this gate. I'm moving. I'll hold us up. Luckily, I get to the gate. They hadn't closed the door. There was a family ahead of us that was a bigger family that had like 5 or 6 kids that they were trying to get all on the plane. And I was like, oh, okay, good. A couple minutes later, my dad shows up, and we were able to get on, able to board. It was the biggest flight that I think I've ever been on. The first class, they had like the covers where if you wanted to sleep, you could. It was three seats. There are 9 seats a row, so 3 all the way across. I don't think I've ever been on a plane that big before, but definitely it was interesting. Get into Detroit and then take a lift over to Ann Arbor. We get there. It was about a half-hour drive, and it was dark. And, if you're listening in North Dakota, we've been hit by the Canadian wildfires quite a bit. It is also hitting Ann Arbor as well. It was right when we walked off, you could smell the smoke from the wildfires. But we get in, we get to the hotel, we check in, kind of relax, and we had a quick turnaround because we were my dad and I, we were going to go golf in the morning. That was part of the trip, was going to be going golfing get a couple of rounds of golf in. And we go first day. Didn't play great. Played okay for the first time, not playing a course I was familiar with. The greens were tricky. Greens were a lot faster than what I was used to. Same with my dad. My dad played a little bit better than me, but my iron game didn't want to cooperate at all, and I shot like a 101. I think my dad shot like a 90. He's a lot better at golf than me. But after that, then we threw our clubs in the lift, and then we actually went up and toured the Henry Ford Museum, which if you're ever in Detroit, I would highly recommend going. It's in Dearborn, and it's not just about the history of Ford. It also has all sorts of innovation, from the steam engine, the first airplane that was invented. It was a lot of other things of innovation where it talked about. It had the McDonald's, the first McDonald's sign was in there. The KFC sign was in there. They had 4 or 5 different presidential motorcades, the first train, and the evolution of how the trains evolved from the first one to where they are now. And the very interesting, cool to see just the thought process, the ability that the guys had back in the 20s, 30s to think of these things, put it on paper, and then be able to construct and build it, and just to see how far technology has advanced. Because back when those things were first invented, to think of like how they were able to come up with it and then able to get it to work, it was really, really cool to see. I would love to go back and check out more of it. They've got more than just the museum. We were just able to go to the museum, but they also have like a Ford factory there, and along with Greenfield Village, which has a bunch of different things as far as different farm equipment that has come up. Henry Ford's childhood home that he grew up in is also there. So would have been cooler to check out if we had a little bit more time. Maybe that's something I do next time I'm there. But after that, we got back to our hotel, and then we went downtown, kind of Ann Arbor. It is the campus. It reminded me a lot of the University of Minnesota, where it was kind of its own like self-sufficient town, where it had businesses, it had shops, had restaurants. Everything was all just kind of in the middle of campus. And ate at a place called the Brown Jug, which was really cool. All their restaurant, all the menu items were named after a former Wolverine. I had the Charles Woodson patty melt. My dad had Blake Corum's ribs. Both were excellent. If you're ever in Ann Arbor, definitely go check out the Brown Jug. We're just throwing out some free ads there, and cool to see all the memorabilia that it had in there. And then after that, we kind of went and walked around campus. We went and checked out the part of campus, the Burton Tower, which I think is a staple of the campus. We wanted to go check out the Diag, which I learned on our Big House tour that it is that if you step on it, you're going to fail your first test. Unfortunately, anybody who was going to visit it, they weren't going to be able to because it was under construction. And then after that, we kind of walked around and went and checked out their athletic facilities. We walked around, was able to get on the softball field, but other than that, it was pretty tight. We ended up walking around Schembechler Hall. The football team was practicing, but Ohio State, but they have everything covered where you were able to sneak a couple of peeks, but weren't able to do it for a long time. Didn't want to get caught. I learned on that Big House tour that there were some spots where Ohio State was filming Michigan's practices, and when Michigan went to the NCAA to talk about it, the NCAA said that is legal, so they ended up putting up a bunch of covers to prevent that. So pretty tough to see. They don't allow a lot of people into Schembechler Hall. I would have loved to tour that. There's a museum in there as well, but wasn't able to see that. But kind of cool to take a peek in and see what you could of practice. Didn't get to see a whole lot. I didn't want somebody walking up to me and getting into trouble because we didn't have any harm done. Just wanted to see what the Team 146 Michigan Wolverines are going to be looking like. But we kept walking and ended up getting home. And then Sunday morning, we went and woke up. We went and did another course. It was called Huron Hills. It was a beautiful course. And guys, when I tell you that I was locked in on the front nine, I shot a 39. I was 7 over. I was feeling good, playing great. I was putting great. And we get to hole 10 and hit a drive right down the middle of the fairway, about 90 yards out. Take my gab wedge. I stick it to about 10 feet. Have a 10-foot birdie putt to get back to 6 over. And I'm feeling good. At worst, I'm going to par this. But the golf course said, the hell you are. And I go up, hit my birdie putt, and I think I have it lined in. I'm about ready to start walking it in. And all of a sudden, it lips around, and it goes right to where I was standing. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I was like, well, you know what? I just hit it. Just maybe hit a little softer. Try that. Hit it right on line, ready to start walking it in. Lips around again, goes back to about where I was. Try it again. Same story. On and 2, have a great chance at a birdie putt, double bogey. And that basically set the round for the back nine. Just completely fell apart. Went double, triple, double. Was able to get back to some bogey golf for the last 4 holes. Went bogey, par, double bogey. Ended up shooting a 91. I thought I was going to have a shot at breaking 80. That didn't happen. I couldn't even keep it in the 80s. But that's golf. I guess I learned from it. I found some new things that I'm excited to go out and try and work on in the next time I play. But yeah, it was very frustrating, very unfortunate that that happened, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. But I can't say enough of how great that Huron Hills course was. It was in beautiful shape. It was a really nice course, well kept. The staff was very friendly. We weren't waiting on anybody. It was very pretty, very scenic. Had a lot of trees, but not a lot that were in the way. So that was also nice. Didn't have to worry about hitting. But with my game, anytime there's trees around, there's a good chance that I'm probably going to hit them at some point. But a good time. Definitely want to go back and play that course for sure. And after that, we went back to the hotel, and then we went and ate at another Ann Arbor staple called Zingerman's, the deli, and had a brisket sandwich. It was a crazy busy line. I mean, it was for 2:00 in the afternoon. It was a half-hour wait for your food, but we stuck it out. We went and ate. After that, we kind of walked around the campus again. Did a little bit more exploring of their downtown. Went and checked out a couple of shops, things like that, and we kept walking. And then we ended up walking towards the tour, or towards the facilities again. We went and checked out Ferry Field, which was one of the original the second home of Michigan football. Ferry Field, that was where they played before the Big House was. The first field was played where the Al Glick Fieldhouse, their indoor facility is. That was their first field. But at Ferry Field, that was also where home to the track team for many years. It was also the home. They had a plaque there where Jesse Owens at the Big Ten Championships broke 4 world records in a span of 45 minutes. It was a wild thing to believe, but he think he broke 4 records in 45 minutes in the 1930s. Cool to check out. It was just a track. That's kind of what the students use now is to run and walk on. It's not used by the track team anymore. They have a new one. And then after that, we kind of kept walking. All of their facilities outside of the Big House and the Chrysler Arena where the basketball team plays is all basically down one street. And we kept walking. We went and looked over at Yost Fieldhouse, which is where the hockey team plays. Originally where the basketball team played, but now it is just the hockey. It's nicknamed the Cathedral of College Hockey. And we just decided to try and open a door to see if we could get in. And sure enough, we did. There was actually a game going on. It was a 4 Nations exhibition going on there. So it was cool to kind of just check it out and see what it looked like from the inside. It is all metal seating. So I can about imagine that when that place is rocking, how loud it gets. Also got to point out where the football team is honored after they go and beat Ohio State in Columbus. And when the hockey team is playing, they go there. That's been the tradition the last couple of years, is to go to Yost and get a standing ovation from the Michigan crowd. And after that, it was free to the public. So kind of stood there and watched for a little bit, and then we kept walking, and then went back. And we put on about 10 miles those 2 days of walking the University of Michigan campus. And then on Monday night, or Monday, we woke up. It was checkout day, so we had to get everything all packed up and get ready to leave. And we went and ate had breakfast at a place called Fleetwood, which was just kind of a pop-up, diner, 1950s style diner. And it was really good. Had great food my entire time I was down there. And then after that, we got a ride to the Big House, where we got to tour it. And by far, hands down, my favorite part of the trip, being able to go into the locker room, go sit where Tom Brady, Jim Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy go sit at their seat when they played. They were the starting quarterback at Michigan. Go learning a little bit more about the history. Apparently, there is because where the stadium was built, it was built on a water spring, and when they started construction, the water spring completely engulfed a crane, and the rumor is that the crane is still underneath there. And it was just sitting, being in there and looking around, seeing all the envisioning all the history, all the moments, the memories that I have as a child, watching all the games, being in the stadium was cool, and kind of figuring out where all the big plays happen, where the Rod Moore interception, Hassan Haskins 5-touchdown game, Mario Manningham getting a win over Penn State at the buzzer. Very cool to see, and all the history. Being also, we got to go into the visitors' locker room. Got to see where Ryan Day cries after he loses to Michigan every year, and it was just a special. It was a fun day. It was cool to see, walk around. Finally got to go in there. It wasn't for a game. Next time I go to Ann Arbor, it's definitely going to be going to check out a basketball game there, or a football, maybe a basketball game. I wouldn't mind doing that, but definitely going to be checking out a football game the next time I'm there. Just being there, it was awesome. It's hard to put into words. I just tried to really kind of soak everything in, and looking around, just this is beautiful. And then after that, we went and packed up, and we went into Detroit, and we went and checked out got to go see the Tigers Twins, got to go check out Ford Field. Didn't get to go. I got to go in, but I didn't get in very far. There's a security guard right there, and he looked like he had no part of wanting me to go in there or be in there. So I didn't. Walked around a little bit, got to see a Barry Sanders statue. And other than that, that was really all we had for checking out Ford Field. We went to then ended up going into the Comerica Park, which it's a nice ballpark. It's a really nice ballpark. Is it nicer than Target Field? No. I would say if I had to rank it, it was probably similar to Coors Field and probably the old Rangers ballpark. It was nothing overly special, but it was cool to see. I loved how when we walked around the concourse, they had the history of the Tigers. We're able to read on the 40s and 50s, 30s, 20s and 30s, the 1900s and 1910s, and all the way up to the present day. Got to see a Rocco Baldelli masterclass of pulling a starter because for whatever reason, the pitcher was Thomas Davis, and he was pitching well. He only gave up a two-run home run, and after that, they really weren't doing a whole lot on him, but they pulled him instantly. The bullpen gives up the game. The Twins' offense couldn't do anything. They had 3 solo home runs. Didn't get off to a great start where we were sitting, though, either, because my dad and I were sitting there. The Trevor Larnach hits a home run in the first inning, and I start like clapping, yeah, let's go. And we were sitting next to these Tigers fans, and she looks at me and says, why are you cheering for that? I was like, well, she said, do you think you can cheer for the other team? I was like, yeah, I'm wearing the right. I had a Michigan Wolverines hat on. So I was like, well, I cheer for the right team in the fall. She looked at me, okay, we'll give you that. And made friends with them. She was very friendly, very nice. Encouraged us to make sure we make it to a big a Michigan game at some point. So hopefully down the line that does happen. And but yeah, and then after that we walked back, hung out, went to bed, and then had an early flight in the morning and got home and back to work today. And now we're here. We're doing a podcast, and we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes here. It's the Big 12. The Big 12 preview here. I'm gonna be buying stock, selling stock, and any playoff teams that I have, and the conference championship game. But the team that I have buying stock this year, and anybody who knows knows that I am very loyal to this team. I'm going to pick them probably every year that I'm going to buy the stock, and it's going to be the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, they've been the model of consistency of the Big 12. They've won anywhere from 8 to 11 games every year. Last year was a little bit of a down year. They had 4 losses. In those 4 losses, they turned the ball. They had a -8 turnover margin. Usually you do see that bounce back from year to year. You see a team that doesn't turn the ball over, the next year they're turning the ball over. Well, I expect that to come, knowing Chris Kleiman as a head coach. He's going to stress that the ball is the program. They can't turn the ball over. A big part of that last year was Avery Johnson's first year starting. This is his second year in the program, second year, understanding his year of controlling the offense. Kleiman has praised his development and maturity this offseason. Makes you believe that he has taken that next step. They have a game-breaking running back in Dylan Edwards. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the best front 7 in the Big 12. That's a Chris Kleiman staple. That defense is going to be stout. The O-line is a question. I think that is a question. I think it's a fair question. They've got to replace a couple of starters on that offensive line. But I will say, from seeing Chris Kleiman up close, he is very much a developmental coach. I think if there's any coach that you can trust a team, take an inexperienced offensive line, I think you can take him and that coaching staff to develop them and have them playing really well. It might be a struggle at the beginning of the year, but I think by the end of the year, I think they're going to be clicking on all cylinders. Tough start to the year. They got to go up to Dublin, Ireland, and play Iowa State, a team that they have lost to the last 2 years, ruined kind of their chances to be playing in a Big 12 championship game. If you go back to 23, where they played in a snow globe game in Manhattan, I think that's going to be heavy on their mind. It's not going to be weather will not be a factor in Dublin, Ireland this year. So I do expect Kansas State to go out and win that game and come back, and then they get a cupcake UND in week 2. The schedule sets up pretty nicely for them. As I look here, trying to find their schedule. Great podcasting by me, I know. But they and then they host Army, then they go to Arizona, and then they have Central Florida. They go to Baylor, TCU at Kansas, Texas Tech at Oklahoma State at Utah, and finish the year with playing Colorado. Back to the offensive end, I think receiver is a little bit of a question mark. They do have a little bit of a legacy. Sterling Lockett, his dad was a tremendous receiver for the Wildcats, along with his brother Tyler Lockett, that a lot of you have heard of. Had a great career at Kansas State, has had a tremendous career in the NFL. And I expect him. They've got 2 tight ends. They've got a top tight end recruit in the country in Lincoln Kier that they're really high on, along with Garrett Oakley, who has been a big target for Avery Johnson. I think you could see them go with a lot of 2 tight end sets. But I think Kansas State, I really like this team. I think they're going to bounce back. I think there were some issues. I remember Kleiman talking about last year in some post-game press conferences. I'm not sure what it was, but I know that there were some things that were going on within the program, and I think within Coach Kleiman's personal life. I think those are behind him, and I think he's ready to have a really good year. So that's Kansas State is the team that I am buying. But let's go over to the team the stock that I am selling, and that's going to be a team that was in the playoffs last year. I'm going to say it's the Arizona State Sun Devils. Now, I still think Arizona State's going to be a really good team, but as they return, they bring back their top receiver, Jordan Tyson. They have Sam Levitt, excuse me. Their offensive line, they return 3 of their 5 starters, or actually 4 of the 5 starters on the offensive line. But the big question with me is going to be as good as those players are, that offense ran through Cam Scadabo last year, and Cam Scadabo isn't playing for them. It felt like they were a little bit too reliant. You look at that Texas game. I mean, he carried that team to put them in position, gave them all they can handle. I really like Kenny Dillingham as a coach, but Cam Scadabo last year, 60% of their offensive production. That's something that you just don't have. That's not going to be just something that people walk in and replace. I'm going to be very curious to see what they do. Their schedule does set up pretty nicely for them. They've got Northern Arizona at Mississippi State, Texas State, and then they go to Baylor, which I think is a team that we saw end the year on a high note, on a positive note. They were playing really well towards the end of the year. That's going to be their first tough test, and I think we're going to get a really good idea of how Arizona State plans to replace Cam Scadabo at this game. As I think the way this schedule sets up, I think that it could potentially get them to where they finally be able to find some of the answers. But playing a coach like Dave Aranda, a really good defensive coordinator, and then TCU, which is always tricky, and then they got to go to Utah and at Iowa State. But a lot of their games are at home. But that 60% offensive production to replace is a lot. And I don't know if there are answers on there. As great as Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson are, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think this team is very run dependent. Right now, Kyron Brown is their leading rusher or running back from last year. He only had 73 carries, 350 yards, 2 touchdowns. So very small sample size. So he might have the talent. We're going to find out, but I still think just the way the schedule sets up, I think Arizona State might be a playoff team, but I do think I'm going to be selling some of their stock this year. But we're going to go to the championship predictions here, and Grant got me his. He has Utah and Arizona State playing it. I think Utah is going to be a team with a bounce back year. There wasn't a team in the country that was more snake bitten by injuries last year than the Utah Utes. They finally got rid of their Cam Rising. I think it was good. I think it was best that both of them went their separate ways, because he could have come back for another year. But I think it's for the best that neither they're both out of each other's lives. That defense, Kyle Whittingham, anytime Kyle Whittingham is his defense is going to be really good. And this could also potentially be Kyle Whittingham's final year. So I think there might be some extra added motivation for Utah as well in that. But Grant has Arizona State winning. He also has Arizona State in the playoff here as his, and that's going to be his only Big 12 team that makes the playoff. And for me, I have my championship is going to be the Wildcats, Kansas State, beating Texas Tech. Now, this Texas Tech team, they have the second best portal class. They've got a big donor that's basically funding their entire NIL. They went out and they were very aggressive. The offense under Joey McGuire was tremendous. I expect them to continue that, take that next step. But the defense is a question mark. They couldn't stop a nosebleed last year, and they were very aggressive. Like I said, they had the second best portal class. They went out and got Lee Hunter, a defensive tackle from Central Florida. Then they went out and got David Bailey, a linebacker from Stanford. And then they went up to North Dakota and got All-American safety Cole Wisniewski from NDSU. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. But the way that offense is clicking, and if they're able to continue that momentum that they had going on from last year and carry it into this year, all the defense has to do, especially in the Big 12, which is the most competitive. And if you name 8 to 10 teams, I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing for a spot in the playoff. Last year, they got 2 teams in Arizona State and SMU. Or no, it wasn't. It was just Arizona State. Never mind. Why did I think SMU was in the Big 12? Well, because they're in Dallas. But I digress. But I wouldn't be shocked if if Utah, Arizona State, Kansas State, hell, Kansas could. Jalen Daniels is back. Texas Tech, Iowa State is a really good team. I wouldn't be shocked. Baylor, I expect them to be better. Houston, Willie Fritz had a couple of nice. He enters year 2. I think he's going to have had some really nice wins. I think he could potentially play spoiler again, like he did last year against Kansas State. West Virginia, Rich Rod is back. Going to be interesting to see how that works out. I know he's been hot and had some pressers, but for me, I have 2 teams in the playoff from the Big 12 this year, and it's both the teams that are going to be playing in the Big 12 championship right as it stands right now. It is going to be Kansas State and Texas Tech, a couple of teams that are on the fence, and they might make it into my final playoff prediction or college football playoff prediction. But Iowa State, Utah, all those teams that I mentioned, I think all have a chance to get into the playoff or also play in the Big 12 championship game. But I have Kansas State winning. I think it's going to be a tight one. They play November 1 in Manhattan. I think that's going to be a huge game. It could potentially be a big new kickoff game. We'll find out. But Kansas State over Texas Tech. Grant has Arizona State over Utah. And that kind of concludes the Big 12. So we'll keep things moving here. And since it's just me, I'm going to go. We'll start with the AFC West. And the first place, until I see otherwise or until it happens, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be winning the AFC West. I think last year, I think there's an argument this year that you could see this Kansas City team be better than what they were last year. I think last year they were feeling the pressure. They seemed to be playing a lot tighter, but that championship pedigree, that championship DNA that the Chiefs have, I think they just they figured out how to win games. If you watch The Last Dance, BJ Armstrong talks about how Michael Jordan, towards the end of his career, after he got that first championship, he just did whatever he had to do to win the game. It never mattered about anything else. I think that is kind of that mode that the Chiefs have been in. It was just finding ways to win games, doing whatever they had to do. And I think the pressure of three-peating, it got to them, and they played a little bit tighter. They tried to keep making the perfect plays. I think now they're going to be playing a little bit looser. The receiving core, I expect to be better. I think they got better and younger on the offensive line. Steve Spagnuolo, that defense is always going to be stout. Just his ability to dial up the perfect pressure at the perfect time. I have the Chiefs winning the division, and a very hotly contested division, probably one of the most competitive divisions, the most competitive division in the NFL. The best coach division between Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and now Pete Carroll with the Raiders. You'd be hard pressed. I think this is going to be a very competitive division. I wouldn't be shocked if all 4 teams made it, but I don't think the Raiders, I still think they've got a little bit of ways to go roster-wise, but we'll get into them in a little bit. In the 2 spot, and also a wild card team, is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. It's year 2 under Harbaugh. I think he laid the foundation of what he wants the Chargers to be going forward. His philosophy that offensive linemen are also weapons. They went out and they signed Mekhi Becton to bolster the interior of their offensive line, to go with the best tackle duo in the NFL in Andrew Alt and Rashawn Slater. They went and drafted Amarian Hampton and signed Najee Harris to bolster that running back position. Between that, I think it's going to take more added pressure off Justin Herbert. The big question right now with Herbert is tremendous regular season quarterback. He's got to find a way to get that to transfer over to the playoffs. He has not played well. He had 4 interceptions in the regular season, threw 5 in the playoffs down in Houston this year. So I think he's got the perfect coach to learn from and get in the right spot. And I think this year, I think they find a way to win a playoff game. The concern is still at receiver. Who's going to step up after Ladd McConkey? They drafted Trey Jones, a receiver out of Ole Miss, in the second round, and then they actually just signed Keenan Allen as of yesterday. So that I think the offense is going to be fine. They're going to figure it out. They're going to win. They're going to win a lot of games. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a tight race going into the final week of the season. As I need to take a look here and see what the Chargers schedule sets up as. Actually, I can just pull it up on my phone. But the big question will be is what is Justin Herbert? How is he looking to year 2 in Harbaugh? And they're going to go as far as he goes. Can he get them over that hump? Can he get rid of his playoff woes? We've seen it before. There's been a lot of good quarterbacks. Peyton Manning, that was the knock on him until he started winning playoff games, as he couldn't win in the playoffs. He was a great regular season quarterback. Wasn't a great in the playoffs here, but the in the 3 spot and also a playoff team is going to be the Denver Broncos. This is year 2 under Sean Payton and Bo Nix. Sean Payton is very confident, said that he's had in the years that he's coached, he's felt that he has had 6 Super Bowl winning caliber rosters. This is his 7th. This was one of the top defenses last year. And then they went out and signed Dre Greenlaw from San Francisco and Talona Hufanga out of San Francisco as well. And if both of them can stay healthy, they're both game changers. Bo Nix seems to be the perfect quarterback in the Sean Payton offense. He gets the ball out on time. He's one of those quarterbacks that if his first read is open or if the flat's open, he's going to take that every time. Going with the you never go broke taking a profit. They actually went out and they got a tight end. They went and signed Evan Ingram. And when Sean Payton was having his prime years with Drew Brees, he had a really good tight end in Jimmy Graham. It's probably the best tight end that they have had in Denver since Julius Thomas and Owen Daniels back when Payton was playing. And the other part of it is last year is that I think where they struggled was a consistent run game. Where last year it felt like Bo Nix was their top rusher. They went out and are trying to solve that issue. They went and signed J.K. Dobbins. They also are very high on their 2nd round pick, R.J. Harvey. And if they're able to have that 2-headed monster where it's going to take a little bit of pressure off of Bo Nix to be not be that running back and let him just be able to throw the ball, I think receivers, they are really good there. And I think you're going to see that that second year progression of Bo Nix. He's one of those guys that he wants to be coached. He wants to learn. He doesn't care that if he makes a mistake that a coach is going to get on him because he's going to learn from it. There's nobody harder on him than Bo Nix. I have the Broncos. It's going to be another tightly contested. I mean, we could have a 3-headed race going into the final week, and we could have some gnarly tiebreakers as to who is going to come out on top of that division. I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't surprise me. And then in the 4 spot is the Raiders. And now this Raiders team, I think they've taken the right steps. I think they finally have a head coach in the room in Pete Carroll. He's reunited with Geno Smith. Some of the best years that Geno had was with Pete Carroll. I think they're going to be in a lot of games. I think Pete does a great job of finding the weaknesses in teams and exploiting it and doing his best to keep them in the game. And then he goes out and gets a former Pac-12 foe as his offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly, who's going to be calling the plays, who's fresh off of winning a national championship at Ohio State. Really was the big difference into why Ohio State won it was his play calling. And I think this year they might not. I could see them winning 7 or 8 games. and I could also see him ruining or knocking a team out of the playoffs towards the end of the year. But this year it's not really about the wins and losses for the Raiders. This is about building that foundation of what Pete Carroll wants that identity of the team to be. I think the defense is going to be better. The offense, they're going to be coaching to win the game. You're not going to hear talk of the Raider rules or we shut Mahomes down. They're not going to be. No one's going to be mocking Pat Mahomes' voice. So I think the Raiders. I think they're going to take last, but I think they're going to be causing havoc, and the autumn wind is going to be is going to be playing in the background and is going to be in the opponent's minds, especially towards the end of the year, because I think that team is going to start peaking right at the right time. So let's go to the NFC West here, where I was feeling really good going into when I was getting stuff ready for this show. And now I after watching some videos, reading some things, I'm at the point with this division where I might just throw a dart, have all the teams up at a dartboard, and whoever I hit the dart, wherever the dart lands, I could talk myself into them winning the division. But I think I feel all right with it. Not as good as I felt before the Matt Stafford, how he hasn't practiced at all. He had a herniated disc in his back. Hasn't practiced at all this postseason or this training camp, which is kind of a big concern. Sean McVay doesn't really play his starters in the preseason, but those practice reps are very valuable. Those inter squad scrimmages are also really valuable. So I think there's some questions with the Rams to start the year, and they're also going to be playing a first place schedule. And the team that I have winning the NFC West will not be playing playing a championship or divisional championship schedule. And that's going to be it's actually going to be a team that took last in the NFC West last year. That's going to be the San Francisco 49ers. Now, we talked earlier in the show about Utah being the most snake-bitten team by injuries in college football last year. Same goes for the San Francisco 49ers. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. McCaffrey couldn't stay healthy. Trent Williams was hurt. Trent Williams is going to be back. Christian McCaffrey is going to be back and looks to be, by all accounts, as good as he can be. And, now a little bit of a concern. George Kittle can't use his smelling salts, as that was banned by the NFL. But towards the end of the year, I think on the receiver end, they traded Debo in the offseason. But I think they're going to be okay, because I think Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall both showed out last year, played really well towards the end of the year. Ricky Pearsall obviously battling back from being shot to start the year and then playing really well. Robert Saleh makes a return back to the Bay, and I think he's going to be one of those coaches that is a much better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach. Saleh and Shanahan, they coached in a Super Bowl together in back when in which Super Bowl was that? I can't remember. It was in 2020 Super Bowl, whatever that one was. I think you're going to see the defense a lot better. They made it a big priority this offseason. Their first 5 picks in the draft were on the defensive side of the ball. They still have Bosa and Fred Warner. Those are 2 good cornerstones that you want on the defense. They did lose some depth after Leonard Floyd left, and then Hargrave signed with the Vikings after being cut. But they traded for Bryce Huff, who was really good for the Jets in 23. He's going to be playing in a familiar system under Saleh. When he played for the Jets in 23, he was hurt last year. It sounds like he's going to be healthy. Their schedule, we're going to have a good idea of what this schedule is going to, or how their season is going to go, as they play 3 divisional teams in the first 5 games. And if they're able to get out to a hot start, I think they're going to be able to kind of ride that momentum throughout. And with some of the question marks that the other teams in the NFC West have, I like the Niners to win the West, and they're going to be playing in the playoff. In the 2 spot, I still have the Los Angeles Rams, and a lot of that's because of Sean McVay. All that guy does is get to the playoffs. He's only not made the playoffs twice in his coaching career. And as Stafford works his way back from hernia surgery, they've got 2 really good running backs in Kyren Williams, who just signed a big extension with the Rams. The issue with Kyren Williams last year was the fumbles, and it sounded like this year he was a guy that was really working on that. He really focused on his diet, taking care of himself, and carrying a football around so he didn't fumble it. Blake Corum comes back. He looks to have a big year where he didn't play a lot last year and then ended up getting hurt towards the end of the season, breaking his wrist. They let go of Cooper Kupp, but they went out and signed Devontae Adams to replace him and pair with Puka Nacua. I like their tight end room and Cody Parkinson. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they are tremendous. I mean, Jared Verse, Rookie of the Year. Then they went out and signed Poona Ford to bolster the run defense. It's just a really good front seven. And then the big issue with the question on the defensive side of the ball is cornerback. But if that defense is able to get home and get after the quarterback like they were the last couple of years, Jared Verse builds off of a really strong year one. It's not going to have the impact that it would to other teams that don't have that pass rush that the Rams have. So I have the Rams in the 2 spot, and I also have them making the playoffs. I think they return. They're going to find a way to get back in, even if they do get off to a little bit of a slow start. Sean McVay is always going to find a way to right the ship here. So, and then in the 3 spot, and also a borderline, and you could put them on my sleeper list of playoff teams that nobody's really talking about. That's going to be the Arizona Cardinals. And Kyler Murray is an extremely talented quarterback. There are some other question marks as far as maturity goes. Last year, nobody really talks about it, but they were 6-4 going into the bye week. And then Call of Duty must have dropped because after the bye week, they went 2-5 and really petered out. They finished the year 8-9. Kyler going into the bye week had 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. After the bye week, he had 10 total touchdowns and 8 interceptions from weeks 12 to 18. And that's been the recurring theme with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals is they get off to these good starts, and then towards the end of the year, they peter out. Some of it has to do with Kyler Murray, his style of play, the way he runs around and gets hit. He's a smaller guy. He's going to take a little bit more abuse, and I don't think he's taken enough steps. He might have to do the Michael Jordan approach of where Mike's trainer, Tim Grover, talked about how he would track how many steps Michael would take in a game. He would watch the film, and that's what he would do is he would count because he knew that in the workouts, he needed to do that so his body would be ready for it. That's got to be something that Kyler, maybe he's worked on it, maybe he hasn't. But that's something that I think he needs to do because his body gets worn down as the year goes on. And I think it's just because I don't think he prioritizes that as much as he needs to be, especially if you want to be a consistent starting quarterback in the league. James Conner, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison. There's kind of some questions. He didn't have the year everybody expected. Still had 8 touchdowns, little under 900 yards, 62 catches. Can he take that next step? As I take a look here, trying to get this sorted out, I'm trying to take a look. I got to remember who else is on that Cardinals offense. I'm going to find it here. This is great podcasting. All right, here we go. But the James Conner has been a really good running back. Trey Benson as well. Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison. They went out and signed Zay Jones as well, a veteran guy that just knows how to get open. Some really nice weapons, and no one's doubted. I mean, Trey McBride last year, he had the most receiving yards and no touchdowns. Was finally able to get into the end zone towards the end of the year. He had led the team in receptions and receiving yards, basically doubling up Marvin Harrison, 1,100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 111 receptions. A reliable quarterback's best friend is a reliable tight end. And then on the defensive side, Jonathan Gannon, that's his calling card, is defense. When you watch the Cardinals on defense, there's no doubt that team plays hard. I mean, the talent just wasn't there last year. Budda Baker had a career year. He's fresh off an extension as well. But the question going into this year is going to be the pass rush, and they addressed that. They went out and signed Josh Sweat from the Eagles, Calais Campbell. The first 6 picks that they had in the draft this year were defensive. And then in the secondary, to go with Budda Baker at corner, a guy that's having a really good camp. And if he's able to stay healthy, look out. It's cornerback Will Johnson out of Michigan. I mean, the guy, when he's healthy, is a lockdown receiver. Some of the battles that he had with Marvin Harrison Jr. when Marvin was at Ohio State, Will was at Michigan, were fun to watch. Go back on YouTube and you can go watch some of those battles, those back and forth battles. It sounds like he's having a really good camp. He slid all the way down to the second round because of some of the injuries history where he hasn't been able to stay healthy. There were some issues that on the medical that showed up that his foot was a lot worse than what it was. Hopefully, if he's able to stay on the field, look out. That Arizona's got their lockdown corner for the rest of for a long time. And they also are going to be getting Darius Robinson back, who on the defensive line, who missed a good chunk of last year, coming back from, I believe it was an ACL injury. But he played really well to end the year. Their schedule actually sets up really nicely to start the year. It really does. As they start at New Orleans, then they have Carolina at San Francisco, Seattle, Tennessee at Indy, in Green Bay. I wouldn't be shocked if they start 5-2, 6-1, just the way the schedule sets up for them. Then they get a bye. They get to go to Dallas, a place that Kyler Murray has never lost. Homecoming of sort for him. And has always played well there. He's never lost in that stadium. But like I said earlier, the questions aren't going to be the start of the year. I expect Arizona to get off to a hot start. The question is, how are they going to finish the year? Because there's as nice of a schedule as they have to start the year, the end of the season is not friendly to them. They play the Rams twice. They go travel to Houston and Cincinnati. Both going to be tough places to play. Both going to be fighting for playoff positioning. Houston and Cincy going to be fighting for playoff position amongst themselves potentially. Arizona also going to be fighting within whether the division or wild card, and then they have Atlanta at home, who I think is going to be a pesky out with Michael Penix in year 2. In the end, I wouldn't be shocked if they could lose all of those games, or they could, just because of what we've seen with the Cardinals the last few years, is they've just fallen off at the end of the season. Good enough, though, to take third, potentially a wild card. And then rounding out the NFC West, and this NFC West division, folks, it's going to be a hotly contested game battle. I wouldn't be shocked if all the teams in both of these divisions are above 500 and hovering around that 500 record. Is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. And because it's mostly because that's the team that has the most question marks at two of the most important positions. That's going to be at quarterback and on the offensive line. Now, the offensive line, they went out and drafted Gray Zabel in the first round, a tremendous player. I think he's going to have a great career in Seattle. Going to be a cornerstone on the offensive line for the Seahawks as Mike McDonald looks to build. But Sam Darnold. Now, which Sam Darnold are you going to get? We've seen Sam Darnold with a bad offensive line. And also, I'm very curious to see how he looks with offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. Last year, Sam Darnold had probably one of the best quarterback coaches in the NFL in Kevin O'Connell. Now he goes to Clint Kubiak, who got off to a hot start last year in New Orleans, and then after that, it just fell off after Derek Carr got hurt. Is he able to get that same production that we saw from Sam Darnold weeks 1 to 17? If we're able to see that, a couple of those losses that are already on the schedule, maybe they're able to turn them into wins. I'm not sure. They traded DK Metcalf in the offseason to the Steelers. Is Jackson Smith and Jigba ready to be a true number one? They also let go of Tyler Lockett as well, I believe. Yes, they did let go of Tyler Lockett as well. They went out and did sign Cooper Kupp, but he's had a lot of injuries the last couple of years, so we're not sure how healthy he's going to be. And it's also a brutal start to the season. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they start the year 1-7. I mean, they play San Francisco, they go to Pittsburgh, they play New Orleans. That's going to be a win. Then a short turnaround where they got to go to Arizona on a Thursday night. And then they have Tampa at home, who's I think is going to be a really good team. And then they go to Jacksonville, which you're traveling all the way across the country. That's always a tough game. And then they have Houston. And then out of the bye, they go to Washington. I wouldn't be shocked if they start the year 1-7. I do like Mike McDonald as a head coach. I think he's a really good schematic coach. He's good at dialing up pressures at the right time. They went out and addressed the pass rush by signing DeMarcus Lawrence, but can he stay healthy? That was the big question. He only played in 4 games for the Cowboys last year. So there's a lot of questions. I like Devin Witherspoon as a corner, but outside of that, I don't know if they have the defense. I think they have the right scheme. I don't think they have the personnel, and that's why I have them 4th as to in the division. I think they might be able to sneak a couple of wins. I think they might finish even over 500. They might be in that 9-8 year. But with the questions, the inability to rush the passer, I'm not sure if we can trust Sam Darnold. I think you're going to have to really rely on that run game of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And we're not sure what we were going to get out of JSN. He had a really good year last year. It felt like he took the next step, but how much of that was because DK was taking a lot of the focus away from Jackson Smith and Jigma, allowing him to get open. We're going to find out. But this year, the teams I have in the playoffs for the NFC West are the Niners and the Rams. When we the week before the NFL starts, we're gonna record get our predictions for our seating wise goes. But that wraps up this week's episode. We're gonna be back next week with the SEC preview and the AFC and NFC West predictions here. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, leave a review. But that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in. I have been speaking for over an hour now, which was crazy. I remember when I first started this that I think my first episode was maybe 20 minutes, and now I can do it for over an hour. So I'll pat myself on the back for that. But thank you again to everybody who has tuned in, and we'll talk to you next week.